Hey there. So, my next guest, absolute powerhouse in the business space, in the gaming world. And he comes on, he shares so much advice in this episode. This was definitely one of the ones I enjoyed sitting there. I was like on the edge of my seat, like, what else is he going to say? I was really looking forward to this one. And I know you all are going to love it too. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, I have a very special guest with us. I have Bryan Yale. Hey there, Bryan. How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Well, it's a beautiful sunny day in Las Vegas. How about yourself?
Except for beautiful and sunny, exactly the same.
You live right about where I used to live for about 9 years, so I understand.
Right off the coast of the Great Lake Erie, so it's just fun times for us during the snow season. So yeah, we'll survive.
I can honestly say I had never seen a body of water that brown before.
At least it's not on fire, which is a good thing. I mean, it has been in the past, but right now there is no fire on Lake Erie. I can attest to that.
That's right. All right. So, Bryan, I like getting the show started, getting right into it. So, why don't you begin by just telling
Sure.
us a little bit about yourself, please?
So I guess important to esports and in the gaming space, I've been in and around gaming since like the early 90s. I've always been a gamer, had pretty much every console growing up. Competitively, I was at Fragfest, which was in Dallas back in 97. Um, from there, I was just manager of a comic book store. We did gaming, Magic the Gathering. I was a judge for Magic the Gathering back in early 2000s, Pokemon when it first came on the market. And then went into land centers. I was manager of 3 land centers back in early 2000s. Had a pro Counter-Strike team back then in Dallas in the CPL. And really fell in love with it. I saw the space. Funny story, we actually had teams fly in from everywhere. And one of the teams, SK, at the time was the highest paid Counter-Strike team. And they were making 40 grand a year. And it was mind blowing that you can make 40 grand a year. But the U.S., while it knew gaming, it didn't have, it just wasn't the right time for esports to really blow up. And so, I was in college, I ended up getting married, went into cybersecurity for about 10 years, but I was always a gamer, always played, kept connections with all my friends, just everybody who ended up all being gamers. And about 5 years ago now, 6 years ago, really made a decision to jump back into the industry that I love so much within esports and gaming. Met a guy by the name of Chris Cheney, really got well connected, really like him, still best friends, still really good friends. And we started a group called Infinite Esports. And that was down in Dallas, down in Frisco, Texas. And it really was an amazing experience. I was head of analytics for Infinite. I was also the president and founder of GGEA, which is GG Esports Academy. And from there, I mean, we spent an amazing year there. You can look up all the news stories. Everyone knows the stories about Infinite and the exits and all that stuff. But it's my greatest success and the greatest failure at the same time. We could have done so much more with it. But like any business in the space, some things are just out of your control. There are things that you can do perfectly and do everything right, or make decisions that other people may disagree with, but there was a purpose for them. And then someone else with the bigger pockets makes a decision, and you just have to follow it. And but still very successful, very fun time. Amazing group of people that are all individually successful in their own rights, gone on to do amazing things still. And then went into the world around esports gambling, around the analytics around that. I'm a mentor for Stadia partners in their sports accelerator and esports accelerator, so I do mentorship for them. And that's where I met my latest company, Rival.ai, and that's where I'm currently the CEO of Rival.ai. And yep, that takes us to the current. So kind of the fast
Beautiful.
version.
That's a long and storied career right there.
It's all gaming. It's not really a career, right? It's all fun and games. Like I don't actually work for a living. I do nothing.
Well, we'll talk about you doing nothing here in just a second. But before we get into that, I start every interview with a single question. So I'm going to ask you just like I ask everybody else. So Bryan, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you?
Oh, square.
There you go.
It's not. It's not. I'm unique, I guess. I mean, I am who I am, right? It's one of those things that I think you have to be authentic, and weird is authentic. Like, do you stand out? Yes, I stand out. I have a beard, as you can see, that I'm well known for amongst all my. You have to have an identity, right? In the space, more than anything, you have to be you, and you have to have something that separates yourself. So unique is not a bad thing at all. It is unique is a compliment in our industry, as you know. You have to stand out.
That's actually probably one of the best answers I've gotten so far to that question. I've interviewed over 160 people so far.
But I'm unique in that sense too, so good. I'm winning on both accounts.
Square is a new one. I have not gotten square as an answer.
1 to 10 is such a it's so limiting, right? So how do you denote between an 8 and a 9, right? Like, what are the guidelines here?
That's right. I had one guy say, "I'm not quite cone on my traffic cone on my head weird, but I'm up there."
But people are so afraid. I think that's one of the things just in gamers in general. Like, for so long, it was such a stigmatism that you were the weird kid, right? But now when you look at it, the weird is not bad. The weird is unique. Weird, like, it's this countercultural thing. We always see this rise and fall in society of, culture becomes counterculture, becomes culture again, right? So it's this up and down thing. And I think now the weird kids are now becoming the norm, which will then shift back the other way at some point. But I think right now, weird isn't bad. Weird is unique. Coloring your hair crazy colors before was a strange thing, but now it's standard, right? I'm heavily tattooed. That used to be a weird thing, but now it's like a normal thing, right? There's the constant ebb and flow. And I think weird right now is kind of on par.
I love it. Okay. So Bryan, you kind of gave me a little bit about your gaming background, but this is the gamerpreneur. So I do need your gaming cred. When did you first start playing video games?
80s. I was born in 80. So I had an Atari. I played Qbert, Moon Patrol, Joust. And then, of course, I evolved in the Nintendo, Double Dribble, just into Zelda, of course, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, Sega, Dreamcast, the Jaguar. I was one of the few guys that had the Atari Jaguar.
I was going to say.
Oh man, I loved it. Like, you bought into the hype, right? 64 plus 64 is 128. Yes, exactly. That's how math works.
See, I bust out the Sega Saturn every now and then. It's like the Saturn, like the Jaguar.
Oh, the Saturn was great. Jaguar, man. Like, Alien vs Predator is still my favorite game of all time. One of my favorite games of all time on the Jaguar. It was so cutting edge back then, but no one played it. Guardian Heroes on the Dreamcast was an amazing game before there was Melee. So before, like, the whole Smash Brothers scene came out, Guardian Heroes for the true gamers was the game. Weapons Lord for Super Nintendo, the fighting game that had a better better netmask for stuff than even the fighting games now. So it was actually, that game was made for tournament scene back in the 90s. It was insane. It was so far ahead of its time. I can go on many stories. Final Fantasy, of course. I mean, like, that's my first love was Final Fantasy 3. You go into 7. Like, and the remake was great, but it didn't quite capture what Final Fantasy 7 was back in the day, right? It was such a giant leap in video gaming, and you spend over 100 hours into a game. I mean, that's what you did back then. GoldenEye, of course. I can go on and on, man. Like,
I know. How about today? What are you playing today?
I'm in a Hearthstone league, so I play in a Hearthstone league, and I'm actually playing tomorrow, my first match. I play League of Legends with my son. I was a huge WoW. I was in WoW since beta up till Wrath, but got out, thankfully. I mean, that was one of the pit traps of my life. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're very
still
well.
In.
I want to go back, but I know it's dangerous. So I know my limits. It's the one game that I won't go back into, just because of I know I love it so much, and it just takes up so much time to do it right, in essence. But I played Star Wars Galaxies. It was one of my favorite games. Like, I 2-box Star Wars Galaxies, Final Fantasy Online. Yeah, I mean, all of them. But now it's just League of Legends, Hearthstone. I'll play the Cyberpunk, and of course, like, all the Call of Duty I'll play on every now and then. Counter-Strike. Yeah, just
I love it. Okay, one more kind of gaming related question. Then I want to talk
Sure.
business because you have such a deep
Yep.
background that I cannot wait to get to that. But you've had the gamut. You've had access to basically every game that's come out in your lifetime.
Yep.
If you had to pick one as your all time favorite, which is that one?
For me, it goes. I think it's a tie for two different reasons. One, Final Fantasy III was one of the first games I played that really was such a unique style game for me, and was one that I dumped so many hours into for story and gameplay. It showed me the universe that could be so much bigger, and it was one of those things that started this love of each evolving next step. So it wasn't just Final Fantasy III; it was like the gateway into the whole line. I think that's really what started it for me. The other one, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the Nintendo because it was an impossible game. It was
The first
so
one
hard to
with
play.
that seaweed and the
Yes,
bombs.
yes, yes. You understand. It was like the impossible game. It was one of those that showed me that you don't have to beat a game to enjoy it. That there was a point to where, like, I'm sure if I went back into it, I could play it now and beat it, but it was so hard.
There were
And the
literally
journey,
rooms you'd walk into. You're like, I cannot clear this room. I got to leave, come
yeah,
back, respawn the enemy, see if I can get a better set.
that this is so you understand my pain like that
Oh yeah.
but that was one of the first things that fun didn't mean winning, and I think that's very important, that winning doesn't equate fun. The challenge equated fun, and for me that kind of has been my motto kind of going forward. It's not about winning, it's just the challenge of it.
I'll proudly admit I beat it once.
Did you really? See,
With
congrats.
one turtle left, like one hit on the shredder. Like that was it. All right. Bryan, let's get on to the preneur part because like your background is so incredible. You have so much advice to be able to give to my audience. And I cannot wait to discuss it. But like first, let's discuss what are you currently doing at Rival.ai?
So Rival.ai, we take any streamed video. So we'll take a game that is streamed on Twitch or any other medium, and we actually pull data sets from it. So we can pull data sets from any streamed game without touching APIs. So it's one of those things we're not worried about having developer tie-ins. And now with the industry going to where it's very monetized, the data is monetized. In order to get the APIs, you have to pay someone for it. We actually don't have to worry about that. If the match is streamed or the game is streamed, we can actually just rip the data directly from the stream itself. It also helps with, we do video submission stuff for amateurs. So we're working on a product now for people to send their videos to us, and we actually rate them in the system. And we actually start this whole scouting process that we see in traditional sports. That's our goal with this one, is to create this kind of, not it's to enable path to pro, work with tier 2 teams and academy teams to scout potential talent in the world.
Very cool. And you said you're the CEO. And what does that
CEO.
mean?
You're the face, basically. People think the CEO is this like amazing, like you have all the leadership and you have all the control of everything. That's not necessarily the case. Well, yes, you have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of say where the company goes. You really just are the first person someone thinks about when they think about the company. You are the face of the franchise in essence. So when you go talk to the investors and the money people and other partnership people, they tie your name and your who you are to the product, and that's the purpose of a CEO, is that you're the embodiment of the company in essence.
This is going to be one of my best interviews ever because that's actually the right answer. Most people don't give that answer. What does it mean to be a CEO? Oh, I wear every hat. It means I do every single job. Like that's not quite what a CEO is supposed to do.
No, I mean, in real terms, especially on startups, you are the safety net in essence. You're the reason why people want to invest in the company, because if they don't believe in you, they don't believe in the company. It's that simple. So your role as a CEO is to be that guiding hand in that safety net in essence.
Okay. Now, why did you decide to join Rival.ai?
I love the product. I mean, it was one of those things that I've always liked, solving impossible problems. And in order to do that, you have to have the right tools to do it. And sometimes the right tool is not necessarily something special built. It's just something that's so flexible that can adjust on the fly. One of the things that really impressed me about Rival was that it could turn on a dime really quickly and go from one project to the other. And the way that it was built, the framework of it was really adaptable. And in esports, you have to be adaptable. It have to be super fast.
Okay. Now, your background is incredible, and to be able to get where you are, what steps did you take that necessarily led you here?
You have to talk to people. It's a very simple thing. You can have the best ideas in the world, but if you don't go out there and talk to people, you get nowhere. You will still be thinking of a great idea 15 years from now. So how I got here, conversations, human conversations. And business is not about product. Business is not about industry. Business is about people. And talking to people is the number one thing you have to do.
I
And
love it. Now, was that difficult though? Because you're a gamer, you own LAN centers, you own a comic book store. Is this like typical for a gamer to be able to do?
uh, once you learn that everyone loves to talk about gaming, it's pretty simple, right? Like I remember when I first met Chris, he was wearing a Star Wars T-shirt, and we talked about everything but gaming. We talked about Star Wars, martial arts, um, other things. I mean, it was just very easy conversations. Once you learn that people are just people, it's a pretty easy conversation to have. Now, it's much easier now that gaming is sought after, so people come to you, and they're more open to hearing about your off the wall ideas or how you're different, how you're special, whatever that is. But you have to just be able to kind of just have that conversation and have the confidence in yourself, to know that you know what you're talking about, and someone out there needs to hear what you have to say. And it may not be the person you're talking to right now, but I guarantee you, if you really believe in what you're talking about, someone out there needs to hear what you have to say. And it's just finding the right person.
Can we talk about that a little bit more? Because I've often had guests on the show and people who've been interested on my show but then choose not to discuss the concept of the imposter syndrome. They know they're decent at what they do, but they don't think they're at that level to be able to engage with businesses or with other people. Do you have any advice for that?
Yeah. Have you ever watched Wizard of Oz and the man behind the curtain? Here's the secret, guys. There's always a man behind the curtain. That every level you go up, as high as you go up, as deep as you go into this industry, it's always just a fat guy behind a curtain. That's all it is. I mean, the imposter syndrome comes from a place of fear that you're not good enough, and the guy you're talking to is better than you are. It's not true. I mean, it's just not true. It's just another guy. He could have a lot of money in his bank account. I guarantee you, he has the same interest that you do. I mean, it's at some level, yes. There's some guys that are just they're not the people you want to talk to, and they're always going to be that way if they have money or not, right? But when you're having these conversations, no one's special. No one's better than you are, and you have to believe that you are the expert at it. I watch a lot of anime. I don't know if you watch a lot of anime. I watch a lot of
Always.
anime.
Yeah,
And
always.
so my biggest thing is like with Naruto, you have your ninja way, right? I always tell entrepreneurs, find your ninja way. Find that one thing that you go into every situation knowing that this is how you approach it. This is your one thing. This is who you are, and no one's going to stop you doing that. And if you get that down, I guarantee you will find success in some shape, way, or form.
That's fantastic. My usual anime reference is a Gurren Lagann. I tell them to be more like Kamina
Yeah,
rather than Simone.
yeah. There's so many. I mean, I always want to do it. And someday I just need to do it. Is just do the anime's guide to entrepreneurship, and just start going through these key things that you find in anime, but they draw direct conclusions into the business world and the entrepreneurial world. It's funny, but that's a language now. I think more people speak. When you go on LinkedIn, no one's going to find an anime reference. But how many people that you talk to watch anime? I mean, it's this whole industry that like gaming is kind of like shunned and not really talked about, but there's so many good stories in it. There's so many good reference points in it. And it's a connecting point to speak a language. And that's the thing in gaming is you have to be able to speak a language that they understand, right? We talk about Rock Lee dropping the weights, right? Like it's one of the most iconic scenes in any anime. And if anybody watches anime, and especially Naruto stuff, but when Lee drops the weights, and it's just one of those iconic scenes that everyone talks about. But there's business things to it, right? It's this concept of, you always working, but you always have that moment where you drop your weights and you go all in, right? You have to pick those moments. It's not all the time. This cliche of you're working 24/7, 100% of the time is bullshit. Sorry, it's BS. It's one of those things you're working, but you pick your moments, and your moments that you surprise everybody and you go all in on something. So again, I can go all day on this stuff, but there's a passion there, and there's so many people that can be enabled in this industry if we just speak to them in languages that they understand. What you talked about, the imposter syndrome, I think they feel like they have to be who they're not, and that's not true. I went to Rock Nation. I was at Jay-Z's office wearing joggers. Like, I'm a grown man and I'm wearing sweatpants, and there's a gold room 5 feet away from me. The room's all gold from this very successful guy in this very successful industry, and I'm in sweatpants. That's just who I am, right? Like, I'm not going to change who I am, because if you want to talk to me, you want to talk to me. You don't want to talk to some facade of me. You don't want to talk to some fake of me. You want to talk to who I am, and I'm going to be real with you. I think people, if they get that much confidence in themselves and belief, sky's the limit for them.
Absolutely. Okay. Now, Bryan, here's the thing though. You've had some massive success, and, there's lots of people out there trying to start their business, trying to build something, may not have a clue what they're doing. What advice do you have from your, roughly 20 years of business experience that you might be able to give people?
Talk to other people. Don't be the smartest person in the room. I mean, that's a huge cliche, but it's very true. I think you are most successful when you find your opposites, and find people that are just so much better than you at other things that you're not good at. Challenge yourself to that. Know that, like, there's a lot of internal categorizing and itemization you have to do, and to be a leader and to go start a business, you have to know what you know how to do, and you have to understand that there are things that you will never know how to do, and don't pretend that you do. Too many people I come across that fail in this space think they need to know everything, and those are the guys that aren't taken serious. When you talk to people, those men behind the curtain, the guys that make the money, they know one thing really well: their money, and they want you to be the expert in the other thing. And it's just, find those other pieces to complete you. And they don't have to be on your team. You can just find mentors. There's a lot of guys out there that if you just reach out to them, they'll be happy to walk you through and help you with just advice. Go to LinkedIn and just start spamming every day. Just reaching out to people every day. You don't have to have a reason. Just say, hey, do you have time to talk whenever on your schedule? I'd love to have a 15, 30-minute conversation just to see how you're doing, what you're doing, or whatever. If you're able to do that, it helps you with your imposter thing. It helps with you being able to talk to people, but it also creates your network. And you'll be amazed in esports how small that network actually is. Everybody knows everybody. Especially close to the top you get, everybody knows everybody. And they know all the different ideas. They know, where to direct people to. Often you'll get off conversations with somebody say, hey, you should go talk to this guy. And if they don't say that, ask that. Hey, who else should I talk to about this? And I guarantee you, most people will tell you 4 or 5 names of people to go talk to, because that's just who we are. I mean, it's a close-knit group, and we love sharing that information.
That is absolutely beautiful. And that's in fact how I got to you. It was literally LinkedIn. I sent you a message and that was it.
Exactly. That's all it takes. There are so many people that want to talk, and for the right reasons. I get tons of messages, a lot of them sales stuff. I don't want to respond to that. I mean, I don't want to do your workshop over in Russia. I don't want to, I know which ones are fake and I know which ones are real, right? And I'm glad to talk to people. I even put out something on LinkedIn, it was almost a year ago now, where if you want to talk, hit me up, because I go for a walk every day, and I want to fill that walk with somebody. I don't care who they are. I'll talk to anybody. So, like, if you're wanting to talk, hey, hit me up on LinkedIn. We'll just have a conversation. If you want to know about esports, gaming, whatever, I'm glad to do it. Don't try to sales pitch me, and I'm good, right? Like, if it's just a conversation, I'm all for the conversations.
Okay. Now, Bryan, let's take a trip back through time for a second. And roughly when did you start your entrepreneurial journey?
journey is a weird word, right? So I think, I think you're born onto the journey of it, right? Because it starts with the idea, and it starts with that. It's a mindset. I think there's certain people that are just made to be entrepreneurs. I think it takes a certain mentality. You have to be afraid. You have to be okay with failing 99% of the time. You have to be okay with that kind of living on the edge at all times kind of concept. So I think I've always been built for it. The start of the journey really, I've always done side jobs. So like, I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur. Even though if I had a main job, I always had a side business. Always ways to not just make money, but do new things. So I say like it's back to the 90s, I guess. I mean, it's
Okay.
been there,
All right.
yeah.
I'm actually 100% in agreement with you, by the way. Like I realized I was an entrepreneur when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Like that would like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been an entrepreneur. I didn't realize it.
There's it's a special, crazy kind of person. I mean, they really are. You to have like every entrepreneur has this moment, and everyone out there, if you watch this or whatever, you have a moment when you have less than nothing in your bank account, and you don't know how you're going to make it tomorrow, but you get up and you find a way, and you repeat that process over and over again. And even when you have money in the bank account, you realize you're only 30 days away from it being all gone. And you're okay with that. And you're happy with that. And it's this weird self-punishment thing, but the moments of creation are so great. And there's not a moment of success. I mean, for those that like, there's never a moment you're like, haha, I've been successful. No, there's never that moment. It's just a constant path of building and solving and pushing yourself to where one day when you look back, you're not upset that you didn't do it. I mean, I think that's still a moment of success. And when you look back and you're like, you know what? I'm glad I did what I did. Regardless of where you sit financially, regardless of where you sit with material items, that's not really the driving force in this. It's a mental thing.
Oh, I love it. I knew this was gonna be a good interview. All right, but back in time for a second. Let's go back 21 years, 22 years. Let's party like it's 1999. And if you could go back and you could talk to your little self, little Bryan, and you can go, hey, little Bryan, here's everything that's going to happen to you over the next 21 years of your life. But here's the one thing you absolutely have to know. What is that one thing?
The funny part about it was I would say that there's one thing you have to know, and I wouldn't tell myself it.
Well, tell me.
because because the pursuit of the unknown, the pursuit of that thing is what drives me. And it's what the one thing would be that would drives me back then. That there was a thing I'd have to know, and I have to go find it, would be the one thing that motivated me to go do everything I needed to go do. Right. I speak a lot in terms of the unknown when I talk to entrepreneurs, that the people talk about business models and people talk about things of, well, I need to know this to go do this. I need to know this to go do that. And what I tell them is, no, you need to know that there's a lot of unknowns, and that there are more unknowns than you can ever imagine. And that's okay. And you have to make a decision with the unknowns there. It's a void. You recognize it, make a decision around it, and just go. So if I go back to my old self, I don't know. I don't know if I'd ever believe anything, and I don't like being told answers. I go find answers. So going back and telling myself that there is an answer out there, I just have to go find it, I think is the thing that would motivate me more than anything and set me on a path faster. I mean, I think the generic answers of gaming is a real thing, sure. But I've had such a wild ride that I don't know. I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't go back and give myself a head start on anything. I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question, but
not at all, but I'm willing to roll with it. No, okay.
Well,
no, it's perfectly good. That was a fantastic answer. I have another question though, because you have seen both businesses big and small, and most people don't get that, right? Either they've went straight into big business or they went straight into small business and they've kind of stayed there. What are some similarities and differences you've seen between the two? And, how do you get out of the small and get to big, or how do you avoid becoming small after you started as big?
I was really the crazy story and what people don't talk about Infinite, and I don't like talking much about Infinite just in general, just because of everything that happened. But one of the things I will tell you about Infinite during its heyday is everyone loved working. They had such a passion, even at a large business. You don't see in large businesses, you lose the passion. And one of the things that I didn't see happen in Infinite was, the loss of that passion. People worked so many hours, and it was their choice. We actually had to start taking mandatory Fridays off. We literally had to lock the doors. We had unlimited vacation time no one took. We had unlimited sick pay that no one took. Because people were just so excited to come to work and do this thing and see this thing grow. And so from that sense, it's very unique working at that kind of large company when you have over 180 employees. Everyone's kind of working all over the world, literally. But to see that kind of passion, that kind of dedication.
Well, is that leadership? Is that culture? What is that?
Both. I mean, I think everything starts at the top. I think leadership is definitely paramount. I think you have to have leaders that believe in delegation, that believe in. I'm a firm believer. If I hire you, I'd rather hire you for life, and we'll roll with it because I made the decision at some point that you were the reason why that you deserve this job. That there's some spot for you. It may not be where you started, but we'll find a spot for you. But you fit into my mentality and what I believe a worker should be. So I'm going to give you that chance regardless. And you have to put faith that they're going to do the right thing. And you have to, hold them accountable for it, of course, but not delegate, not micromanage. I guess the one flaw I had, sometimes I was too hands off. Like I wouldn't give them enough direction. And that's the hardest thing in entrepreneurship is when you're creating rule sets and you're creating something from nothing. Some people just aren't able to do that. They're not able to cross that line of it doesn't exist, so make it exist. But other than that, when I push way more towards the delegation than I do micromanagement. And I think any successful business is like that. You have to empower your people. And support and challenge them. I mean, create games with it, create contests with it, make them show what they can do, make them work out, hey, give them a project that's well beyond what they know how to do and see what they do with it. And there's no failure. Don't chastise them for it. Everyone kind of wins. The last lecture was a book I read. I don't know if you ever read that one where he talks about the Alice Project. And it's just, he has this thing called the Penguin Award where it's, with coding, he challenges his students to create this massive project. And he gives up, I think it's called the Penguin Award for someone that creates the biggest project but fails and doesn't complete it. Right? To me, that's amazing because you're pushing them and you're saying it's okay to work towards this lofty goal. And if you don't reach it, it's fine. But the fact you tried for it is the most important thing. And that goes to culture. I mean, it's hard to create a culture of gamers into a corporate one. So we do have that. There was that. Yes, you do have to show up for work, and that's fine. I mean, but you don't put too many constraints on it, right? Like, we never had an issue where people wouldn't show up. Sometimes they show up at like 10, but they still till like midnight. So it doesn't really matter how you get your hours in. Just get your hours in. I know Hex is really big on just get the work done. Doesn't matter how many hours it takes you. If you're good enough to get it done 2 hours, then you're good enough to get it done 2 hours. We pay for the job for delivery. We don't pay for how long it takes you to do it. So I like that approach. I'm very big on just, we're here to get something done. I mean,
beautiful.
From point A to point B, how we get there. I mean, that's the journey. That's part of this process.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go back to journey for a second. I want to talk about you a little more
Sure.
personally, if we can. You see, I
Mhm.
believe we learn the most in our lives from our failures rather than our successes, because it's our failures that
Absolutely.
teach us. Your success, you may not know
Mhm.
what happened. Like, yeah, I did it. Like, I don't know what did, right? But the
It's luck.
failure, you
Yeah.
can figure out right quick what went wrong and how to move forward. So I'd like to
Mhm.
ask you, Bryan, what do you
Mhm.
consider your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, see, it's a good question. Um, I'll go personal on this one, and it ties into business, but I know this is a business show, but I'll go personal.
That's
My
all good.
biggest failure was my marriage. So I recently got divorced. Um, and it's not anything horrible. It's not anything. It's my failure to balance the personal life and the business life, and the fact of like, how do you separate or how do you create that surrounding? And this is very important for people getting the entrepreneurship. Is you have so many aspects of your life. I mean, you're married. You understand that when you're entrepreneur, your work never ends. You're never off, but you have to create time for those other aspects of your life that are just as important, right? You have to create that time where there are reasons why you do things with your kids, and those are super important. And they want to be a part of your life just as much as you want to create this business world for them. You justify it in your mind of, well, I'm doing this for you guys, but at the same time, they just want to have that immediate time right then. And I would say just not grasping that fast enough, not grasping the full impact that can have on everything, probably was the greatest failure. And it's one of these you can't learn unless you go through it. I mean, you can always say, "Oh yeah, I get it. Yeah, I make time." No, you don't, and you don't. It doesn't hit you until it's done. It doesn't hit you until, like you said, it is a failure. I mean, it's not like you can fix it. It's not like you can go back. Right? It's done. It's over. It's one of those life lessons that you can only move forward with it. Um, yeah, I mean that's because business and personal, for especially for the entrepreneur, are so intertwined.
Mhm.
It's something I like to mention to people in the business space. Is just um, if you're married, just make sure that they're on board with it and understand what it takes, and to keep you in check when you're just running on empty and you're not being your best, right? Like having that counterbalance is so strong. And if you're able to do that, kudos to you. And it's a good find to have a spouse that really can keep you in check and keep you grounded.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. A related question. What is something you're working to improve on yourself today?
Um, every day you have to improve on something. I mean, it's funny you bring this up. I always am um, trying to teach myself new things, no matter what they are. I mean, I recently went through a big stint about cooking. I learned how to cook. I mean, it's strange. I used to never cook before, but now I cook everything from smoking to grilling to I cook every meal now. In business, the it's hard because business is about relationships, and so you have personal growth. Like I learned a lot about reading more about quantum mathematics. I do a lot with modeling. That's actually my specialty is with mathematics and modeling and stuff. So I'm always trying to look at different mathematical things and statistical stuff. Um, I read a lot about just different periods of time, different empires, different ways they built their empires and how they failed. Um, I read about different leaders, just different people and how they interact with people. Just all different facets of life. I'm kind of all over the board, but I think it's important. In business, you can never stop to research a decision you have to make. You just make a decision as fast as you can on the fly. And so I'm a person that believes that you should always be learning things on the around you. Just pull all the information in. It may not be relevant in the moment, but down the road you'll have that in your toolkit to make a faster decision, because you don't have time to stop and go research something. So you have this time now. You should always be taking in information, and that's why I say go talk to people. People will tell you amazing stuff, and you learn stuff from people faster than you would from any book. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm always in that mode of learning, of pushing the boundaries, of of trying to push myself. And I'm actually, the moments in my life I've ever been depressed have been when I'm not, when I'm not learning, I'm not pushing myself. That's why I play in this Hearthstone tournament thing. Like it's a league of guys that are old guys like me. They're just playing games just to challenge myself, just to do something to push those limits a little bit more.
That's fantastic. All right. Do you have a library card? Are you one of the 5% of the population that does? No.
No, I do not. I do not have a library card. I mean, I think the internet is. I mean, I have an Audible collection. I mean, I don't know if that. Yeah, I pay for my library.
My Kindle broke, so I'm supposed to be getting a new one for Christmas.
Oh, nice. Oh, and I would say books are amazing. Audiobooks. I don't listen to music. I have not listened to music in 20 years, basically. I mean, I'll listen to it in the car or something, sometimes with my kids, but by choice, I almost always have headphones on or one earphone, and it's always a book. It's always something. I believe in the theater of the mind. I believe that imagination is far greater tool than anyone ever believes. I'm a huge follower. Like, I watch Critical Role. I don't know if you ever do. It's a D&D show on Twitch. It's amazing. Just because of the fantastical nature and the improv, and just, I believe if you don't have an imagination, you will fail. You have to be imaginative in this business. You have to be able to solve problems. And if you're not stretching that muscle, just like anything else, it gets weak. So I'm always pushing that.
Love it. Okay, one more kind of fun question before we start bringing this in for a landing here. What is something that you think people misunderstand about you the first time they meet you?
I don't like them. I get a lot from people can see me as kind of cold because I don't show a lot of facial features, and the beard kind of scares them. I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'1" and closer to 300 pounds than I like to be. So like, I'm not a small guy, and so I can be kind of intimidating, but I'm really not. I mean, I'm really the opposite of it. But yeah, that's one thing that people misunderstand that about me a lot, is that either I don't care or I'm not listening. I do, and I'm very approachable. And I'll talk to, as you can see, I can talk for a very long time about just gaming, about anything that you want to nerd out about. I'll find some thread of commonality, and I'll yank on it and we'll go. Like, it's just how I am.
Fantastic. All right, Bryan. So as we're wrapping this up, how do people find you? How do they reach out to you? Where's Rival.ai? All that.
Yeah. So you can reach me on LinkedIn is probably the best way for business stuff. I'm on Twitter, but it's my gaming handle. So Kotamora_HS. So I do it just for gaming stuff. But for business stuff, definitely LinkedIn is the best way to do it. Rival, we're based in Canada, Toronto. And definitely, again, LinkedIn is the best way to hit me up there. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. And as we're wrapping this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share, or anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
So much. You didn't ask any good questions. I'm really upset about this.
Well, I apologize.
No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. This is a great interview. I think the one thing I would share with people, if you're truly into the entrepreneurship of where do I start, this starts with a conversation. It always starts with a conversation. And the difference between success and failure is the person that starts that conversation. And that it's that simple. I mean, the world is out there. Stick to it, believe in yourself, and have that conversation.
Okay, I got one more question.
Sure.
So, I hear that all the time. And as someone who is used to be shy, like I used to be horribly introverted, how do you do that? How do you actually go out there and find the person you need to talk to? Isn't it like finding a needle in a haystack?
It is, but here's the funny thing. It's a good analogy, but the way I say it is, when you have that conversation with that haystack or whatever, that haystack becomes magnetized, and it starts pulling the needle that you need to find closer to you. And then you have another conversation, and now those two haystacks are magnetized, and it's a bigger field, and it pulls that one needle closer and closer. So the more conversations you have, the stronger your pull will get, to get that needle to you to have that one conversation that you need to have. It all starts with one. You won't be the first one. And where you end up in your journey is never where you think it's going to be. It's always going to be somewhere completely different. I mean, it is, I can't tell you, you have an idea right now. You have an idea in your head of what you want. That's not where you're going to end up. That is not the product you're going to deliver. That is not the story you're going to tell when it's all said and done. I can promise you that. But it will be a story and it will be amazing. And you just need to start, and the needle will come to you. And you may not even know it. The crazy part about it is the conversation you need to have, if when you start having them, maybe 2 conversations ago, and you didn't realize it. And it just comes back to you. So just never give up. And it's cliche, I know, but just set yourself these things of, I'm going to contact 2 people today. I'm going to have 1 conversation. 2 people today. I'm going to have 1 conversation. 2 people today. I'm going to have 1 conversation. And sooner or later, you'll wake up and you realize you're having 4 conversations a day, and your LinkedIn profile has 1,800 connections, and people are contacting you for stuff that you have no idea about. But now you're in it, right? And it happens so slowly and then so suddenly. And that's just the way our world that we live in works. In the entrepreneurship is the slowest thing possible until it's the fastest thing you've ever seen. And that's just the way the business is.
That is such a great way of putting it. Bryan Yale, thank you so much for coming on today. I genuinely do
Oh,
appreciate
absolutely.
this.
Oh, it was great. Thanks for having me. And yeah, if you ever need me back, let me know.
Absolutely. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.